It's been 3 years, nearly four, since Jonas Lindberg released his critically acclaimed Miles from Nowhere, and that's an album that garnered him a lot of attention in 2022, landed him on a number of prestigious lists. Well, it seems he's been busier since then, dealing with life changes, not having loads of pandemic created uninterrupted time, and the process this time around took him just a little bit longer. So, one might ask, how did this shift in his work processes impact the results of this new album? Does uninterrupted time really make a big difference for him? Or does the introduction of distractions change how the product comes out? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Hey there, Prognoggins. Dave here. This is Bleeding Edge with another album review. Working my way through that late year flurry. We've had a bunch of albums come out recently, and it's going to be easy to, I'm sure, overlook a bunch. I know I've overlooked a bunch throughout the year, so I'll do my best, but I know I'm getting a bunch in a short span of time. This is one of them that did not slip through my nets. Jonas Lindberg and the Other Side. The album is called Time Frames. I'm saying Jonas because, if I'm not mistaken, memory says at this exact moment, and I've forgotten to check, that he's from Finland or somewhere thereabout. Could be Swedish. I don't know. Somewhere in the part of the world where J is pronounced Jonas, not Jonas, as we Americans are likely to want to say. Hopefully that's the way he does it, because otherwise I'm going to feel kind of silly taking the time to pronounce his name in the manner that I think is appropriate with a Scandinavian origin. But, yeah, hey, we'll see what happens. Lord knows I've got a dicey history with names, but we'll work our way through it. So this time around, he did make a commitment to do as much of the instrumentation himself as he could. But at the same time, he's got a band here with him. That would be The Other Side. So a bunch of people joining him for this one, some of them returning from the last album. So along for the ride, we have Jonas Sundqvist. I think that's how you say that with a V in it, unless it's Sundqvist. Don't actually know. Lead and backing vocals. That's along with Jonas Lindberg himself doing lead and backing vocals and bass and keyboards and acoustic and electric guitars and mandolin. He does a lot. We have another Jonas who jumps in with some more lead and backing vocals. We have Jenny Storm with lead and backing vocals. We have Nicholas Thelen, lap steel guitar, 12-string acoustic guitars, additional electric guitars. Callie Schoening, lead guitars as well. And Jonathan Lundberg, not Lindberg, Lundberg on drums. And all of this, of course, as you might guess, being it's, his project, and he did most of the stuff. Jonas Lindberg himself wrote, produced, mixed, all of it. So he's been a busy lad. Keeping a lot of these balls in the air to make this album. Now, this is, oddly enough, this breaks a trend we've had going for a while. This is not a concept album. No concept here, no thematic connection between the songs. This is a collection of 7 songs that runs for 69 minutes. That's almost an average of 10 minutes per song. It's not broken down that way, of course, so clearly the man had no shortage of ideas, even if he maybe had a little bit of a tighter time frame to work in. Oh, gee, is that where the title of the album comes in? Yes, it is. That would be the closest thing to a thematic concept in action here, is the idea that he had to do the album in little bits and pieces, fits and starts, this here on this timeline and then this other part on another timeline, and he described it as a series of mini deadlines that he had to work on, as opposed to being able to basically do it all at once uninterrupted as he did last time. So that is where we get the title of the album. And I guess if there's a concept, maybe the concept is his life. He's had a bit going on recently as far as work and all that kind of stuff, but the big thing for him was becoming a father. And that is probably one of those things that any of us that walk our way into parenthood find out. Time has a whole different meaning at that point. Doing what we want without interruptions, over for about 18 years, depending on how many of them you have. At least 18 years. So there we go. He's learning about that. And hey, that's natural. It happens. And so congrats to him. The rest of us will live with the delay in the album. We'll be able to survive it. So before I get into the breakdown, a couple of things of points of business. If you have a moment, please like and subscribe. You can wait till after the video to decide if you like it or not, but if you could, and if you want to follow along on my proggy adventures and interviews and album reviews and other stuff coming up, we are close to the end of the year lists, so we'll be talking about Song of the Year and Album of the Year and a few other things. That'll be, of course, taking up time in December. Subscribe and even hit the little bell so you can follow along, know what's going on when it happens. And in addition, a quick review of my methodology for those not already familiar. I'll do it quickly for those that are. 4 categories: intellectual, innovative, technical, and emotional. Break them down, rate them all on 1 to 5 scale, average them out. I might add a personal enjoyment modifier or subtract one depending on how well the raw score matches my experience of the album. That's it quickly. And as always, we start off with intellectual. So as we mentioned, this is not a big concept album. This is not some sort of thematic thing going on where all the songs are connected in some way, except that in many ways they are inspired by Jonas's life and influenced by the changes in his own life. So I don't know. Maybe there is a little bit of a concept there, but most artists in some way, shape, or form are inspired by their life and their experiences. If you want to go that route, then everything's a concept album. So it's not what it's meant to be. He says that himself. I can see that. So, but what we have is a set of songs. They are unconnected thematically, but they are dealing with various subjects, including handling changes, feeling confident with your life partner or yourself. We'll get back to that in a little bit. The distancing of society due to technology, spiritual connectedness within us all. And how we are linked, whether we perceive it that way or not. At least that's what I've understood it. And I say maybe on every one of these, because most of these lyrics are open-ended enough to provide a lot of opportunity for listener interpretation. So I don't know if I haven't interpreted them the way Jonas intended, or if I'm off base. It's been known to happen. I think there's documented proof, at least in 1 or 2 of my videos, where I completely misinterpreted a song that was written by somebody else. That happens. And or maybe he's perfectly happy with that. Similar to Jason Beeler, who says he likes to write the songs and he doesn't like to describe exactly what they mean to him because they might have an entirely different meaning to somebody else. And he doesn't want to take that away from them. That may be Jonas's perspective on it as well. That maybe these meanings can coexist with one another. I think one for me in particular that stood out was the second song, Someone Like Me. And as I read the lyrics through the first time, I got to thinking this sounds like somebody talking really about having a really, really close connection with his partner, his significant other, whatever you want to call them, in that they are very, very similar personality and they just have so much in common. But then there were other aspects of the lyrics when I looked at them a little more closely that gave me the impression like, it could be he's talking about something a little more abstract, such as his comfort level with himself as a person and learning to recognize and appreciate those aspects of himself. Or maybe it's something a little more whimsical, talking about his reflection or his shadow or both, or the aspects of him that are reflected back to him within the world. I don't know. It actually was interesting when I realized that there, for me, were multiple interpretations of that song. And I dig that. I have always enjoyed that kind of thing. So they're pretty cool here. Overall, the lyrics and the thought behind them are very solid, very expressive. Not always the most incredibly deep stuff I have encountered this year. And certainly I have come across some incredibly deep thinkers in the past year, so the competition is high. And he might have a tendency to rely a little bit more on cliche expressions than is best for the overall intellectual rating on this one. But otherwise, a very solid score. I'm going to give him 3.75. That ranks pretty high. And as you can tell, I'm getting into the fractions and enjoying them these days. Innovative. All right. So, not much to say here. This would be fairly standard, straight ahead prog rock. Varying degrees of influences within that subgenre, whether it's the pastoral English folk music or more American blues based rock. It blends them nicely. You hear bits of Kansas and Styx, or you hear little bits of Yes and Genesis, probably more along the Yes side because it's more rock than it is folky. But there's a bit of that there, and it kind of all flows in and out to varying degrees throughout the songs. I'd say, if anything, he leans a bit more towards American style prog, but it's all good and it's very enjoyable. Just not what I would call innovative. It's pretty well straight ahead, knows its boundaries, plays within them. I would score this a 3. Looking at the technical side of things now, this is an album where there's a lot of talent on display, but nobody's there to pound it into your head how talented they are. Definitely highly competent musicianship throughout. And most of the instrumental breaks, I think, are mostly orchestrated or composed, however you want to say it, as opposed to something derived from improvisation or even in a jazz fusion kind of thing where it is improvisation at the time of recording. Whichever you want to call those, orchestrated or composed. Not exactly subject to significant displays of virtuosity. But that doesn't mean those aren't there, and they are used strategically, I guess we'll call it. The ones that do show up, normally in the longer songs, are well placed. They are not overly extended. They do not overwhelm the listener. They don't overstay their welcome. But they are done in, I think, a very nice proportion, and they are really, really impressive chops on display here. This is a talented bunch of people playing. Being that there's so many people or multiple people on guitars at various times and all that, it makes it a little hard to know who's doing a lot of it, but I presume Jonas is doing a lot of it too. And I think overall, for my taste, the balance of the crafted restraint and the unbridled exhibitionism, if I can use that word, is really nice. And it, for me, favors the former, at least as far as I remember it. Sometimes, I can get a little lost listening to things, and I don't necessarily realize there's a lot of intense musicianship going on, but that's just the way it is for me. But really, really, really high-level musicianship on display here. I'm going to score this a 4.25. And then finally, we get to emotional. Admittedly, a category with which I have been stingy with the points. Sorry. So nobody take it badly if I don't score high. This is not necessarily to foreshadow a result on this one. Really, for this one, generally an album on display here of relaxing prog mixed in with energetic rock. Only really occasionally swelling into really grand expressions of emotion and music. But they do happen, and they happen sporadically throughout the album. You might have something that's a bit of, I don't know, groove on, I think is how it will be pronounced. The instrumental is a bit more restrained for me than I would like for an instrumental running that long. And Galactic Velvet is a very, very mellow tune that sort of sits in the middle of the album, almost like a moment to catch your breath from some of the other stuff. But it's usually sitting somewhere in mid-tempo to on the faster pace of tempo, but rarely gets into seriously exuberant rock. It does here and there in places. What I'd say is most of these feel like they hit the fairly standard kinds of musical swells that you might expect from any of the various Neil Morse projects or Big Big Train or a band like IQ. It's never huge and operatic heights or anything like that. I don't know where I'm reaching to. It's often within a certain limit. It doesn't get massively emotional or is certainly not overlifting, but a lot of nice, bright tones and melodies and uplifting major keys, that kind of stuff that's there. For me, overall, quite enjoyable, though not what I would call heart on the sleeve kind of thing. It does have some moments here and there that, could sweep the listener away a little bit, depending on who you are, but probably only briefly. I'm going to score this a 3.25, stingy as ever. Or maybe I did foreshadow a little bit. Guilty. Anyway, let's recount our scores. Intellectual, 3.75. Innovative, 3. Technical, 4.25. And emotional, 3.25. When you put all of that together, you get a raw average score of 3.56. Now, Other general thoughts about the album. I didn't find this to be an album that shook my tree a lot in style, if that makes sense. I tend to like things a little bit more avant garde. I tend to like things a bit hard edged. I tend to like things that surprise me. I've heard a lot of other bands with similar styles and similar approaches over the years, and even this year. But I'm going to say overall, I tend to find this one a bit more accessible and sticking with me a lot more than some of those others. It just was an album that I think immediately feels familiar without feeling like it's regurgitated. It's got nice, catchy melodies, nice, energetic performances, and there's good hooks on a lot of these choruses that can make this album stand out a bit more for me over the year. It's one of those ones I probably am going to put on the bubble for my top album, my album of the year list. It's on the bubble. It's on there. It also depends on how long I make that list. I'm undecided on that point as of yet anyway. But I don't want that to suggest I don't find this a very enjoyable album. It did stand out a bit for me. And maybe it's a little bit of that connecting with the American rock side of me, like that Kansas kind of feel at times. The well-placed use and I think, I don't want to say sparing, I want to say strategic, I want to say did it when they needed to, use of virtuosity throughout it, never overused. And I like that. I like that there's some restraint and some focus on composition and not just throwing a groove down and everybody take their turn blowing our ears off. Every song feels like that can be too much, and these guys aren't anywhere near that. You never feel really like you're listening to a clinic or a guitar duel or something like that. And I enjoy that about it. The multiple lead vocalists is a nice touch as well, going from male to female, sometimes a little bit within the same song. Sometimes you got a song like Galactic Velvet where it's all female vocals. At least it sounded all female vocals to me. And then maybe different male vocals. Very cool. I like that. And at certain points, they were recalling other artists to me, which I'll talk about in a little minute. But it was not in a bad way, but it was just interesting at times. I'd be like, this is reminiscent of so-and-so, and I'll tell you who in a moment. So, but for those of you who are more in the, if it's not contradictory to say, traditional prog camp, I think this is going to have a lot of appeal. For someone who is looking for something a bit edgier, a bit more experimental, a bit more hard-edged, this isn't going to be it. This is going to leave you feeling a little meh, probably. So it fits in nicely, though, in the groove that it has chosen for itself, or that Jonas has chosen for himself and his band. Standout songs for me, the lead off, End of the Road, is a great opening track. It's got this bombastic energy that just sort of takes you in almost from the get-go. The chorus vocals, interestingly enough, remind me of Mr. Mister, of all things. And not even necessarily Mr. Mister from their big album, was it Welcome to the Real World, but the album that came after that, Go On, which was a slightly different animal, maybe not quite as strong songs, because obviously it didn't do nearly as well, but it had some cool stuff in it. But the voice and the melody, something about it reminded me of that. And I hadn't thought about that album in a long, long time. Of course, and there's lots of cool noodling, instrumental noodling, showing off a little bit, self-indulgence, as Rush would call it, in this song. But it is nicely balanced and very cool, and it's all part of that energy, and I dug it. It's a pretty solid 12.5-minute length of a song that doesn't feel like it. It blows along quite quickly. It's very breezy, and that's pretty cool. The first single, Faces of Stone, definitely is a standout. That's a good choice. And that one, I think, shows the Kansas influence a little bit more. Got a very rocking feel to it right from the start. Clear highs in the vocals and the chorus that actually, and here's the other one, that almost could have mistaken for Ross Jennings of Haken, if you're listening to them carefully. Certainly sounded a little bit like him, but again, in a good way. And at no point do I feel like, these guys are trying to do this or trying to sound somebody. They're just doing their thing. But as songs go, that's the one I think, is talking about maybe the impact of technology on our modern world. At least that's the way I understood it, especially phones and things like that. It's got a real nice mix of piano and acoustic and electric guitars and bass. Very nice interplay, weaving in and out with everything. Enjoy that one. And then finally, The Wind. That is the 3-part, 17-plus minute epic that closes the album. Starts nice and slow as an acoustic ballad. By the part 3, it's suddenly rocking hard, showing off the guitar with grittier vocals, increased tempo. It's got a nice chorus that goes throughout both parts 1 and 2, and then 3 separately. They change things up a little bit more in 3. Very cool tune. I enjoy it. So, in the end, all that being said, 3.56 maybe seems a little bit low, but I don't want to get overly precious with my modifiers because I almost feel like adding a 0.25, which is the minimum I've ever done one way or the other, takes a little further than I think it would land, but it fits pretty comfortably where I'm thinking, and we'll see. Again, on the bubble for my top albums of the year list, so we'll see what happens. What about you? What are your thoughts? Do we got big fans of Jonas Lindberg and The Other Side out there? People that were eagerly awaiting this follow-up to Miles from Nowhere? How do you feel about it? Do you think it changed things up a lot in terms of how the broken up workflow compared to the last album? To my ear, didn't change it a lot, but I'm curious what the rest of you think. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know where you would rank this in the year's albums as we are coming close to the end of 2025. I'm very curious to know what you think. And if you didn't subscribe yet, what are you waiting for? Take a moment while you're leaving a comment to do the like and subscribe thing. That would be awesome. So that's all I have for you for now. I'm going to try to get another review out in a couple of days. So stand by for that. It's a big one. Spock's Beard. Long-awaited new album. That's coming up real soon. And as always, I leave you with the reminder to never fear to deviate from the norm. And as always, keep it prog.